My name is Emer Beasley and I work in the College of Arts and Humanities, and I'm here to introduce you to Jorie Lagerwey, who is the head of film studies at UCD, and she is going to be taking you through The Tiger King, What Are We Watching? We are also joined by Rebecca Ellison, who has just finished her finals in English at UCD, who actually attended a summer school 4 years ago, who was you attending this very summer school in 2016. She's going to join us after Jorie's talk to speak a little bit about her experience at UCD and give you some insights into what it's like to study at UCD. So again, thanks so much for joining us on this beautiful, bright, sunny day. We're absolutely thrilled to bits to have you with us. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Jorie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Emer, for that lovely introduction. Again, I'm Jorie Lagerwey. I'm the head of film studies. And what I would love to do today is just take a few minutes of your time on this absolutely gorgeous day, at least for those of us in Ireland, and introduce you to the kinds of things that you'll explore when you study film studies at UCD. And I'm going to do that by way of a short talk about this insane, crazy world of Tiger King and pandemic TV. And I can also then answer questions, although we've got Rebecca here to answer your questions, but I can answer questions about how to study film studies at UCD, if you have more questions about the Tiger King when we're done, or even about the rest of the School of English, Drama, and Film. Between us, we can get all your questions answered. And so I'm going to flip over to share my screen. I've got a little PowerPoint presentation for you, and we're going to talk a bit about film studies and Tiger King. Okay, so first of all, Tiger King, what are we watching? That's a question we're going to get to in just a minute. But first, I want to ask a larger question, which is, what is film studies? Because you are all secondary school students, I assume you recognize all of these logos. We've got Netflix, we've got TikTok, YouTube, Instagram TV, Prime Video, and down over in the corner, we've got that good old-fashioned celluloid of the actual cinema. So when you study film studies at UCD, it's going to be all of these things together, and even more, things that we don't even know exist yet, but by the time you finish your degree will be part of the curriculum. We'll study pretty much anything that combines sound, words, and pictures. And we call it film studies because the tools that we use to understand all of those things and the questions that we ask about all of those things, they all started with cinema. That was our first moving image media. So that's why we're called film studies, even though my own specialty is television, and that's why I'm going to be talking to you about TV more today. But when we think about film studies, sorry, figuring out how to change my slides. When we think about film studies, we ask these broad questions. We can sort of boil down film studies to these three big questions. How do we watch? What do we watch? Why do we watch? And what does it mean? And that can include all sorts of things. So that might include aesthetics, what a film looks like, what it sounds like, how those images and sounds work together to create meaning. That might include things like genre, authorship, national cinemas, industrial conditions, technology, government regulation, all of these things that we might not even think of when we sit down in the cinema or sit in front of our computers to watch a program or a film. We aren't thinking probably about government regulation, but that's part of film studies too. And then my personal favorites, we also ask this question, why do we watch and what does it mean? And the more academic way of saying that is questions about culture and representation. That is, what do these moving and talking pictures tell us about who made them, who watches them, what is important and valuable, or on the flip side, not valuable at all to the culture where all of these things exist. And in the middle of this global pandemic, what an awful lot of people are doing is watching TV. And that's really interesting in and of itself to me, because outside of pandemic times, it might seem like TV is quite old-fashioned. My students sometimes tell me TV is dead, and that younger audiences don't own TVs, they don't watch TV. Public service broadcasters struggle for funds. We can see that in the advertisements on RTE begging us to pay our TV licenses. And, you know, we're all gonna just watch whatever it is that we wanna watch on our laptops, or more likely even on our phones anyway. So like, why are we even thinking and talking about television? But in fact, TV is still the most popular, the most watched, and the most mass medium that we share. And to prove that to people, I usually show pictures like this. So as it says down there, we've got supporters at the 2018 World Cup, the Kansas City Chiefs celebrating last year's Super Bowl, and the Dubs winning 5 in a row last year as well. So all these massive sporting events show us that actually millions and sometimes even billions will tune in to television to watch together. And sports is the thing that sort of proves how mass a medium TV still is. But of course, because we keep talking about pandemic times, sports have been canceled or put on holds. If you're a Bundesliga fan, lucky you, you've gotten to watch a match or two maybe. But sports still is the thing that brings us together, because during the pandemic, when we've all been shut in, this is what we've chosen to watch. ESPN's The Last Dance, this Michael Jordan documentary, tens of millions of people around the world have tuned in to watch this documentary. Which is really fantastic. Although full disclosure, I did grow up in Chicago in the 90s while they were winning their 6 championships. So sport can give us a little bit of insight into how much TV we really do consume, even when we say that we don't consume TV. But this might give us a little bit of a hint about why we say we don't watch TV. Why we might be embarrassed to say that we watch TV. So this is another pandemic era hit. Love is Blind is a pretty standard, basic reality dating show. There's not really that much remarkable about it, but it became a smash hit during the pandemic because, you know, people are bored and watching television together in a way that we don't normally do. But what's interesting to me about this show is that it is a reality show that a lot of people might class as trash and might not be willing to admit to watching. And a lot of people, in fact, would say most TV is trash. So why on earth would we study trash? Certainly at university, why would we go to all this work and effort to get into university and then study Love is Blind, really? And I would say it is just as important, maybe even more important, to study things that get categorized as trash as to study things that get categorized as art. Because those things that are called trash tend to be incredibly popular. So why is something that so many people like considered to be so bad? Who even gets to decide what's called trash versus what counts as worth your time? What you're embarrassed to say you watch versus what we can celebrate watching together? And what counts as trash versus what counts as art? And the answer is that when we call something trash, we're putting a value on both what it represents, that is, what it's about, what the people look like who are in it, what those people do, how they behave, how they speak, how they dress, and on and on. And we're putting a value, that same value judgment, on the people who watch that thing that we have decided is trash. And those judgments about mass or popular culture, about what's quote unquote good and what's quote unquote bad, most often those judgments tend to be judgments about class, about gender, about race, about education levels, about all sorts of things that don't really have anything to do with television, but have an awful lot to do with the real world that we live in. And now TV, because it does reach such a large audience, is sometimes understood as a cultural forum. I'll get to Joe in just a minute. And a place, what a cultural forum means is a place where a culture works out its own conflicts and taboos. So thinking about one of the oldest and longest lasting TV genres, soap operas. Soap operas were often the first place that stories about abortion or homosexuality would appear in popular culture. And because these shows were so popular, people would start talking about those issues, working through those ideas that, before they appeared on TV, were secret, were hidden, were so taboo that they were not even acknowledged or discussed. So TV can work as a cultural forum or a kind of cultural living room for airing dirty laundry and working through really difficult, thorny problems. And because I think most of the listeners are in Ireland, and you might be familiar with the Liveline call-in radio show and its long-suffering host, Joe Duffy. Well, when Normal People, another pandemic era TV hit, when the first episodes of Normal People aired in Ireland, the episode of Liveline immediately after that was an absolutely perfect example of a cultural forum in operation discussing norms and taboos around sex and sexuality. It's a little bit NSFW. I'm not sure entirely who's in the room with us today, so I'm going to leave you to look that up yourself if you are not already having a little chuckle remembering that episode of Liveline, but it's all on Twitter. Lenny Abramson directed the first half of the series of Normal People, which is why his quote here, or his tweet rather, gets pride of place. But anyway, go give it a Google and look up the tweets about Normal People in Liveline. They're great. Which brings us to Tiger King. And before I launch in any more about Tiger King, I'm going to ask you to answer these questions here. Have you watched Tiger King and what do you think? So there should be a poll just popped up on your screen and you can click your answers. We'll give it a minute for everyone to click some buttons. Okay, answers are coming in. We are at 90%. Thank you all for clicking those buttons. I think we're about to get the results. All right, look at this. So 50-50 versus have you watched Tiger King and have you not? I have no idea whether this is going to persuade those of you who haven't to jump in or decide you're very happy you stayed away. And what did you think? We've got 31% giving it a thumbs up, only 9% a thumbs down, and 60% of those of you who have watched it are in this category that it is just too crazy to rate because it is genuinely bonkers. So let's go through this a minute and ask some of these big film studies questions about Tiger King. And why on earth this is the show that brought millions of viewers around the English-speaking world together to binge watch during this global crisis. And so just quick warning, this section is going to start out completely fine. It's going to get really, really dark for a minute. And then I'm going to try and swing back around and leave you with something a little bit more positive. In some ways, exactly like the show itself. Starts out in one place, takes you someplace completely unexpected, and then winds up with this happy little package of the extra episode. So those big questions I told you at the beginning, that we ask about film studies, they start with how we watch. And Tiger King would not be the phenomenon it is without Netflix. So how do we watch TV these days? Streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Now TV, all of the various players, a new one kind of seems to pop up every single day. Those streamers and platforms and players have dramatically changed how the TV industry commissions and distributes television shows. So rather than waiting week to week for a new episode, viewers often get all of the episodes of a show all at once. So this encourages binging, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with. And in some ways, it actually emphasizes one of TV's most consistent and long-lasting structural features, the end of the episode cliffhanger, that little tidbit of shock that gets you to stay tuned in, come back next week, watch just one more episode. And the Tiger King does this by dropping hints, sometimes complete bombshells. But there are hints. For example, in the opening voiceover of the very first episode, it hints at murder for hire. But then we don't hear anything about murder for hire until episode 6. And so we're lured in to keep watching and watching and watching and waiting and waiting and waiting. Alternatively, sometimes it drops bombshells at the end of episodes. So at the end of episode 2, for example, Episode 2 has been an hour-long story about exploiting vulnerable employees and all of the different ways that the employees who come to these wild animal parks are vulnerable and how they are exploited by the owners of the parks because of those vulnerabilities. And then all of a sudden, at the very end of the episode, it flips 180 degrees, and suddenly we're talking about Carol Baskin and allegations that she killed her third husband and fed him to the tigers. And that in and of itself is crazy, right? And designed to keep you watching. It convinces you to stay tuned in by throwing in something really shocking at the end of every episode. And murder is followed by murder for hire, is followed by suicide, is followed by tiger attack, and it almost goes on until you can't imagine there is one more shock for them to drop. And the thing is that Netflix doesn't need you to come back next week. They don't need you to come back for an episode from time to time because their business model is based on sheer quantity. So rather than loyalty to a series, they bank on loyalty to their brand. They bank on loyalty to Netflix and the idea that there's so much on Netflix that there will always be something new to watch. So a show like Tiger King, in order to get you to watch all of Tiger King, knowing that you're not going to probably come back week after week after week, they amp up the shock value over and over again to get you to finish the series all in one go, to get you to binge. So that's Tiger King and how we watch. Now, what we watch. Tiger King exploits a couple of incredibly popular genres. True crime, for one, has become, over the last 5 years, one of the most prolific genres on TV and in audio, that is, in podcasts. And maybe the first breakout sort of viral hit of this new true crime trend was the podcast Serial, which first aired in 2014. True crime as a genre has existed for much, much longer than that, but this big, huge wave of true crime that we've been experiencing for the last 5 years or so, I think that started with Serial. And the other incredibly popular genre that Tiger King uses or exploits to get us to tune in is this reality TV spectacle. So much like Love is Blind has this gimmick that people fall in love and get engaged without ever seeing each other physically in person, Tiger King has these gimmicks of celebrity and performance and all of that trashiness and taboo and kind of out of orderness that I was talking about earlier. That is really common to reality TV, and that gets you to tune in. And finally then, why we watch and what does it mean? So I'm going to start here with characters. So every character in Tiger King is marginalized in some way. That is, they don't fit the perfect idealized norm in some way. That might be because they're living in rural poverty, because they're experiencing drug addiction, because they have a disability, because of their gender, their sexuality. Almost any vulnerability that you can think of is represented by the workers, particularly the workers, but also the owners of these tiger parks. And a lot of reality TV is based on enjoying the antics of so-called crazy people. It's sometimes described as a carnival. So historically, carnival is a time when hierarchies get turned upside down. All taboos are thrown aside, people celebrate, they do whatever they want, no rules. And the trade-off to carnival is that it is a bounded, limited amount of time. So you get to go absolutely wild for 1 week in February. You get to go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans and go nuts. But you get that for 1 week so that you blow off enough steam in order to allow you to live within all of these rigid rules and norms for the rest of the year. So characters on reality TV break all of these cultural rules. Very often rules in particular around class and around sexuality. And we watch them with a sort of glee at how over the top, how crazy, how out of bounds it all is. And then at the end of an episode, we go back to our lives and we set aside that TV watching time as something out of real life, as part of the carnival. And Tiger King has caught us in a moment when real life has broken all of the rules. COVID-19 has meant that we no longer have any of the kind of rules and boundaries and norms and patterns of real life. And one author has said that the lockdowns resulting from COVID-19 have created a kind of joyless carnival, and we're all forced to live through it. So that is these normal rules of behavior, of schedules and routines that keep nice, neat, orderly boundaries between work and play and rest, between family and others, between consumption and production. All of those are out of the window when we're on lockdown. So we enter this show in a familiar, almost comforting genre, true crime and reality TV, filled with characters who are behaving in completely out of bounds ways. And millions of people have latched onto this as a sort of reflection or version of craziness that's even crazier and more out of bounds than the real world that we're actually living in. And because of this sort of carnival and taboo breaking and erasure and disruption of norms and taboos in the Tiger King, there's a lot of laughter pointed at Joe Exotic and at Carole Baskin. And in some ways, that laughter, that kind of, oh, can you believe what a crazy guy he is, that comes across as a celebration or as a way to kind of dismiss the importance of the really, really dark characteristics of American culture that these characters represent. Things like virulent misogyny. So trying to have Carole Baskin killed is a symptom of much broader cultural misogyny. And the kind of violent, rage-fueled white masculinity that we see in Joe's political campaign, his being constantly armed, his just carrying guns and blowing things up all over the place, and his really sadistic manipulation of his two husbands that we only learn about sort of, late in the series. And I don't think there's any way that we can separate that kind of really virulent white masculinity from the rest of the protests that are happening in America right now. They are part and parcel of the same thing. And how we respond to Joe Exotic is part and parcel and tells us a lot about how we're going to respond to the protesters in cities all over America from this past week. And this laughter can be a way to let ourselves off the hook, to not have to address those really challenging questions. It's an awkward response to this sort of trashy genre and taboo breaking characters in an attempt to avoid confronting the real world that has gotten oppressively, horrifically bleak from the coronavirus, even before the past week of protests and rebellion in the US. Okay, so I told you it was going to get really dark. I'm going to try and swing it around now. So just like the extra episode that got tacked on the end of the series of Tiger King. So that was an episode in which quarantined actor Joel McHale, not particularly well known, but he used to host a kind of comic chat show. So that makes him a sort of reasonable candidate for having done this particular episode. And he interviews some of the cast of Tiger King via video call, and he asks them sort of very harmless questions about how they've responded to becoming very rapidly famous. And he wants to wrap up the Tiger King, just like I'm trying to wrap up this talk, in a nice little package with quite a lot more boring, but far less disturbing ends. So I've tried to walk you through the ways that Tiger King can show us all of the different parts of studying TV, from cultural contexts, representations, and impacts, to genre and storytelling patterns, to changes in the technology, regulation, and business practices of the industry itself, all of which work tightly, inseparably together to get anything to us on screens. And studying film at UCD will include all of these pieces and then apply them to that huge range of audiovisual media that I mentioned at the beginning, from Netflix documentaries to TikTok, Instagram, right the way through the sort of prestigious art house cinema that might come to mind when you think film studies. All right, so that's me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think we'll hand it back to Emer. Is that right?
That sounds great. And Jorie, thank you so much for that incredible tour around the rapidly changing and unpredictable cultural living room. Fantastic, and lovely to hear about the other shows that are doing so well on Netflix and on the national broadcaster. And thanks for bringing us back into the light as well. Thank you so much. I hope you all really enjoyed that. Before I introduce you to Rebecca, our student, we have one question, if it's okay, Jorie, I might ask now. From Nahiba, asking, from which perspective does the author call the pandemic a carnival if the pandemic isn't allowing people to just have fun with each other or to just celebrate?
That is a great question. And I think what the author was trying to get at is exactly your point, that it's awful. So Carnival is meant to be this time where we get to let loose, go crazy, meet all our friends, go to New Orleans, right, for Mardi Gras. And instead, we have the opposite, where all of the rules are broken, everything has been suspended. We're in this moment that is outside of reality, but we don't get to do any of those things that make Carnival worthwhile. We don't actually get to see any of our friends or go wild and crazy. And that's why she called it a joyless carnival.
Thank you very much, Jorie. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Rebecca Ellison, who, as I mentioned earlier on, has just finished her final exams. She studied English at UCD, and she sat exactly where you're sitting, although it wasn't virtually, it was in reality in the Newman building in UCD 4 years ago. Rebecca is from Rathfarnham in Dublin, and she went to school in Beaufort, and she got really involved in a lot of the societies and clubs in UCD. So she's going to tell you all about her experience. So I might bring you in now, Rebecca, and maybe just ask you to tell everyone who's gathered here today from all over Ireland and beyond, what is it like to study English at UCD?
Well, first off, hi guys, how are you all getting on? I hope you're all very safe and you're enjoying all of the talks that we're having today. Studying English in UCD, when I first went to the summer school, when I was finished 5th year, the one thing that really drew my attention was the way the students and the lecturers spoke about having flexibility and having this broad range of experiences that you could get in UCD, from studying film to drama to poetry, short story writing, to more kind of critical thinking. And one of the things that really drew my attention was that throughout my senior cycle, I would always be very involved with creative writing and short stories. And that was something I've I've always loved putting my pen to paper and just creating something new. And I felt with UCD and the choices that were given in UCD, it just gave me a lot of opportunity to bring in new skills and maybe discover new things that I wouldn't have thought of before. For instance, Shakespeare was probably one of my favorite subjects, but I didn't think it would be something that I would continue through college. And studying Shakespeare at a third level degree actually brought in, well, actually this theme is shown in more modern novels and stuff. And I started falling more and more in love with the subject. And the great thing about the way I did English is that I did it as a joint degree with a computer science module. So I was able to bring creative thinking from my English degree into the analytical with my computer science and vice versa. So it gave me a lot of diversity and kind of helped me tailor to the type of lifestyle and the type of career that I want to go to in the future. And the great thing about UCD, it really feels like a community when you go in there. Newman has so many different people in it. And then when you're in this English degree, it's so broad. You can meet people who have studied drama and film and are doing the same module as you that you may never have crossed over before until this time you stepped in through the Newman doors. And I think just all in all, the experience that you get through studying English, it is a skill that is vital and a necessity in this kind of age where we are very kind of, digitally aware, and people do need to be able to kind of think a little bit more outside the box. And I think just with the way the degree is taught, it just gives you so many options to really hone in on your skills and what you love about your subject.
That's great. Thank you, Rebecca. And can you explain in a few lines how it differs from studying English at school? Because so often student thinks it's just a continuation of studying English at school. Can you explain how it is different?
Yeah, so well, one of the big difference again is that it is so broad, all the different subjects that you can take within it. So when you first go into first year, you will have modules that you will have to take, such as literature and context, where you study from Shakespeare to Chaucer to authors in like the 1900s kind of thing. And then as you go throughout your degree, you can pick and choose the type of modules that you want. There is an elective that studies comic books and fantasy writing, so that if you are really into kind of your graphic novels, you actually get to study this for 12 weeks and really kind of enjoy it. The other thing as well with like your leaving cert, you're very limited to the types of novels and Shakespeare plays that you are going to be studying and examined on. Whereas with college, you're exposed to a wide range of, pieces of literature and, film studies and everything as such. It's so broad. And the great thing is that you can bring in novels and stories that you've learned in one module and talk about them in another module and bring a new light to that. And I think it definitely shows, with your writing when you're able to kind of cross-analyze as well, all of these different texts and even some of your favorite texts from when you were younger, and bring them into new light. So one of the things was that when I did my final piece, I brought in a piece about Ellison Wonderland for like modern short stories and how it relates to, people developing, their personal emotions through text. And it was something that I was able to compare to with a text that I was studying that year. And it kind of just brought in like my bit of passion and my bit of personality into a creative piece and an analytical piece. And that's one of the things I think with English though, since you're exposed to so many different things, if you're interested in a module or you're interested in a particular aspect, college and this degree is where you can actually try it and expose yourself, and you can come to your own conclusions of, well, that was interesting, but maybe I want to go down this version of it, or maybe you absolutely loved it and this is what you want to do for the rest of your life kind of thing. So I think that'd be
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. It really helps distinguish between, studying English for your leaving cert and then taking it on to the next level at university. So thank you for that. When we were chatting last week, you mentioned to me how you got really involved with clubs and societies and things like that in UCD. Can you give all our viewers here a little insight into what it's like to be involved in UCD and what the opportunities are?
Yeah. So the great thing though is that, again, UCD is like a giant community, and within that you have so many different groups and experiences that you can go into. My biggest thing is that if you have any sixth years who are going to be coming in during your second week of the first semester, you have an event called Freshers Week, where all the clubs and societies come together, and they're essentially selling themselves and saying, this is what we offer. There are so many sports clubs, from trampolining, which is what I was involved in for about 2.5 years, to just football teams, basketball. There's the drama society, film soc, lit soc. There are so many different places. And the one thing I would definitely say to everyone though is I was involved in the student union, which is a collective of students from all different degrees who are voted in by you, who represent your degree and your year, and they bring forth any issues or things that they want to change on campus. But they host amazing events and they bring a lot of awareness to the campus. One of the things I would definitely say is, in any way, shape or form you can get involved in any kind of societies, that is where you're going to probably make some of your best friends, because you're bringing an interest that you love. And also as well, it gives a balance from your college work to spending time and doing something that you enjoy. And also it's just a little bit of fun to learn new skills through these clubs. So each club is run by like committee members. You have your secretaries, you have your auditors. There's so many people who have different jobs, and you can get involved with this. And one of the big things that I loved in my role in the student union was, as a class rep, I would actually be involved in talking to students in my year of like, how are you guys getting on? Is there anything that we can do for you? And just to kind of see, are there any changes that we can make to make your experience and the experience of students more interesting and better for you guys. And the conversations that I had with these people throughout my 4 years has been absolutely amazing, and it's given me so many skills that I can pair with my degree. And I think all in all, it just really kind of rounded out the full college experience. So my advice for that bit though is just, if you want to try something new, go for it and try it. There's no like, you're signing this and you have to stay with them for a year. You can come and go as you please. Just try everything, because you're only in college for a short amount of time, and just try everything that you want to do, because there's nothing wrong with doing that.
That is fantastic advice. How wonderful and how generous of you to share all of that with everybody here today. And speaking of advice, do you have any other advice in terms of people deciding what they're going to study? That's not an easy thing to do. Any advice, putting yourself back to when you were in the summer school at UCD, and with what you know now, what would you advise people to do in terms of their courses and their choices?
So this is really funny, because I actually have two cousins who have doing their leaving cert like equivalent this year, and one of them is actually coming up to Dublin from Mullinahone, and they kind of asked me, they're like, in general, what to like expect and what advice would you have? And if I go back to myself when I was in 5th year sitting in that summer school and the things that I know now, the definite thing that I would say, guys, is there are so many people in this college who are there to help you, from your student advisors to your class reps to the counselors, the people in the student union. If you need any way, shape or form help though, they are only an email or just an end of a class away, just to go up and chat to them. There is nothing wrong in asking for a little bit of help or advice on, what to do. Because at the end of the day, no one expects you to be a genius at this within a few weeks kind of thing. A lot of people maybe need, just a little bit more encouragement kind of thing. And that's the same with anything. At the end of the day, the people who are in these positions are there to help you and make sure that you are enjoying yourself and you are getting the most out of your UCD experience. So always ask for that bit of help. The next thing I would say is, with this degree and just with anything, is pick what you want first. If you don't get it the first time around, you might be able to do it in a different semester. I was gutted I couldn't do a module that I wanted in one semester, but I had the option of doing a second semester, and I absolutely loved it and it was amazing. So remember when you're kind of picking your modules, and the great thing is you'll have so much variety in your third year. I think there's almost like 100 options you can pick from them, though, from like contemporary children's literature all the way up to, I think one of them was about zombies and horror novels and stuff like that. There is so much variety, and I think the best thing about UCD is that it gives you that much flexibility to choose what you want and just to have a little bit of fun with it, though. This is something that you should enjoy while you're doing. There are going to be some aspects you may not like, but the courses are all designed in a way that it's going to give you the best out of it. It's going to give you the best amount of skills. The other thing I would say is when it comes to kind of, you know, scheduling yourself, pace yourself throughout it. Don't think that you have to like save everything for the last minute, or you have to do like so much in one go. Remember to take time for yourself and enjoy yourself throughout this experience. Really kind of look at your timetable and look at what you need to do and just pace yourself throughout your time, because at the end of the day, you should be able to enjoy your experience, and you should be able to enjoy the work that you're doing and producing and be proud of it. So that way, when you look back though, it's just like, I did the best that I did because I managed myself and I looked after myself throughout it. And the last thing I would just say is just to make sure you enjoy your experience and you put in what you want to get out of your degree and your time in college, because you guys are now stepping out of secondary school and you're going into a new experience in a new environment. And with everything that's going on though, I think this is a little bit of joy that you guys should have, that you guys are doing something that you want to do. You're going to be learning new skills that you are going to absolutely love. And one of the big things I would say, guys, is if there is anything that you want to try in any aspect through your degree, whether it's maybe, you know, learning a new subject, picking up a new skill, getting involved and learning a new sport, anything like that that you can do, try it, do it. If you don't succeed, try again. Really just try and get the most out of your experience that you can. And just remember that it is your time to enjoy yourself. Like, you've put in the effort, you've worked hard. Now do what you love and learn for yourself though what it is that you want, because this is the time to try and fail and really kind of hone in on all the skills that you really want to get out of your time in UCD.
That's great. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to turn to some of the questions that have come through on the Q&A. So I encourage anyone to send in any questions they might have. The first question is for you, Rebecca. Someone is wondering what you're hoping to do now that you've finished college.
So because I've done a joint degree with computer science and with English, one of the things I would love to do is go into publishing and marketing and media. And during my time in my final year, because I had a bit of flexibility, I've gone through interview processes and I'm currently working on my portfolio at the moment and really just kind of taking my time and honing my skills. So I would love to work with publishing companies or to work with kind of marketing agencies, especially with like young adult literacy companies. And that's kind of like where my big interest really lies. And it's great having a 15-year-old in the house to read my work to make sure it is relevant. So it's a little bit fun in that sense. But yeah, definitely into like publishing or something as such.
Okay, that's very useful. And we have another question from Caroline asking, what type of job can you get after completing a degree in English? So I'd add to that, in terms of what Rebecca has said, a lot of graduates do go on to work in publishing. They go on to work in marketing. They go on to work in a whole variety of different areas. And we've done a lot of research in this, looking at our alumni and where they go on to work. And we will follow up this lecture and send you a copy of the brochure, which outlines the types of careers that our students go on to embrace. But it is true to say that, in a way, a degree in English or in film studies or any related subjects prepares you for a multitude of different types of degrees. Across arts, culture, in government, in tech, in business, and innovation. And we've got lots of examples and lots of stories of graduates who have worked in different areas and who have moved through different careers. And we will send you that link in a follow-up email to everyone who's here today, just to show you the different types of career paths that you can choose. Another question we have in, I'm going to bring you in, Jorie, now, if that's okay, is How long are the essays on average for film and for English?
Very good, nice, precise, practical question. So they start small and get bigger. By the time you're in year 3, you'll be writing 3,000, sometimes as big as 5,000 words. Usually you'll have 5,000 words across the semester. So sometimes that is in one piece of work, and sometimes that's spread across several pieces of work. You might choose to do a 4-year degree, and then you'll be writing a dissertation in year 4, or doing another kind of creative research project in year 4, and that might be a bit longer still. But you're going to start out in first year learning how to do that, because you can't just jump right in and know how to write a 3,000 word research essay. So you'll start with things that are much smaller, short assignments, as little as a couple of hundred words, and essays that might be 1,500 or 200 words, or 2,000 rather, words that you build up to. So don't worry, we're not chucking you in the deep end. As you go through the program, you'll build up step by step as you learn how to create richer, deeper, longer arguments.
And the one thing just to add to that, though, is that, trust me guys, the word count is not as scary as it looks. You do actually fill it out very quickly, like 300 words, because we have to do 300 words every week, though. It is so much, like, you have to edit so much. So when I just look at it at breakdown. And if you're kind of struggling with your word count, maybe reread it and see, are there any extra points that you can put in? But trust me, it is not as scary as it looks. It's just a big number, but you break it down in paragraphs, you will be fine.
Question we have: by doing a degree in English, is it possible from there to become a secondary school teacher? And that is possible. That's from Cyan Doyle. Lovely to hear from you, Cyan. It is possible to go on to further study and to do a master's in education. And you can use the subjects that you've studied at your undergraduate level and to become a specialist in those areas. And there's a 2 years master's degree at UCD. It's the Professional Masters in Education course, which you can look up, the PME it's known as. So that's useful for you to know. We've got quite a few questions coming in about study abroad as well. So there are a variety of opportunities to study abroad. And I know right now, we're really not thinking about study abroad, but hopefully the skies will open up soon. We have programs to study within Europe. It's the Erasmus program, or to study further abroad all over the world. We have connections in more than 41 countries, in Asia, East Asia, in America, in Canada, in South America, and right across Europe and beyond, and in Australia as well, which is another popular choice. And that can be taken as an additional year or as a semester abroad. And that brings me to another question, is how the different ways to study English or film at UCD. And for those of you who are in lockdown and who maybe have some extra time to think about the future, there's different ways to study. We have a 3-year course, which is called the Joint Honours course, where you can pick to study English and film, or English with a range of different subjects. It's called Joint Honours. The code in the CAO is DN520. It's a 3-year degree, but you can add on a 4th year and take a whole year studying abroad, and it's called a BA Joint Honours International degree. So that's one option. You can also study English, drama and film in the BA Humanities. The CAO code for that is DN530. And again, it's called the BA Humanities. And in your 3rd year, you can either undertake an internship or a study abroad semester or do research. So you have got opportunities to pick and choose and to vary your experience in 3rd year. So a lot of students choose to go abroad for 1 semester and maybe take an internship in the 2nd semester. And that's a great way to start exploring career options and also to get a flavor of kind of multicultural living. So we would have connections for the internships with the range of industries that I discussed earlier. So arts and culture, media, publishing, and things like that, business, innovation, HR. There's a whole variety of companies that we work with, and you will get a whole semester working, and the learnings from that you can bring into your degree and vice versa. So it's a really enriching, rounded experience. So I hope that answers those questions. I'm just having a quick flick through here. It's great to see all the questions coming in. Thank you all very, very much. Okay, so we have a question about, for you, Rebecca, what was it like studying computer science with English? Pros and cons, over to you.
Well, definitely the pro was that when I originally wanted to study English, it was actually my mum who convinced me to do a joint degree, because she said, you know, you have the kind of analytical side as well. Why not combine the two? So then at the end of your first year, if you want to transfer into pure English, you have that option then. And that again brings on the point that UCD is extremely flexible when doing this. I think the pro was definitely I was able to write much more better with my analytical pieces, and I was able to, you know, bring in my creative aspect into coming up with, you know, designs and concepts with my computer science. I think the con was probably just because it was so different. The people who would be in my English course wouldn't be in my information social computing, which meant that, you know, I had like two separate groups I had to manage basically when it came to, like, you know, allocating time to do everything. But at the end of the day, that is kind of something that everyone does struggle at some point, though, is just kind of balancing out the two. But I would definitely say if you're kind of in between, you know, two subjects, the best thing that I would say though is even like maybe email you know, someone who's in that you know, department, and maybe, you know, if you have a couple of questions to email them and just ask, so that way if you're unsure, maybe, you know, is this the right degree for me kind of thing, just so you can maybe get a little bit more information, and maybe they'll be able to put you in contact with a past student or someone they may think that can help you with the answers kind of thing. That would be my best advice when it comes to that kind of stuff. But
that's great.
With more pros than cons with it.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I have a couple of questions for you, Jorie. I might bring you in now. This is an interesting one in from Kathleen O'Driscoll. This may seem pessimistic, she writes, but what are the most difficult aspects of studying English and film studies? And I think that's a brilliant question. And then there's another question I'll tag onto that if that's okay. How can I be sure this course is for me?
Oh, those are toughies. Thanks, Emer. Those are really brilliant questions. And I'll start with the second one. The way to know if it's for you is to give it a go. And you have a bit of flexibility in your first year to take options, to take electives, to change your mind if it turns out that it is not for you, to get that help and guidance that Rebecca was talking about earlier, to ask questions, to meet people. If you think that you have a really dedicated interest to something, do it, try it. Don't go and like get a business degree because that seems practical when you're really, really interested in film and media or English or drama or creative writing. Give it a go. It's not a life sentence if it doesn't work out for you. And the first question, what is the hardest part of studying English and film? And you know, I think that's probably a different answer for every person. And what I would say is that, again, going back to Rebecca's earlier point of getting the help and the advice that you need as soon as you see that you run into a problem. And it can be, even if you don't think it's a problem, like it's our job to help you. That's why we're here. And students sometimes don't come and talk to lecturers. But I am overjoyed when a student knocks on my door, because I sit here for, like, I've designated hours every week and no one comes and I'm sad and alone. And then a student comes and I just get so excited that they've come to talk to me, and I am overjoyed to help and get you through whatever the problem is. And that can be something I think that's very intimidating. So try to power through that intimidation, and whether it's your lecturers, whether it is student advisors, whether it is the program office, there's so many people here to help you get through an assignment or time management or interpersonal problems. You know, there are people here to help you, so just do your best to get up the courage to ask for help.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And just to echo what Jorie is saying, the School of English Drama and Film is in a top rating school in Ireland. It's in the top 50. and it is top 50 around the world. So it's a high ranking school. More important than the rank is that sense of community and that sense of dedication to students. All lecturers and professors have hours where students come up and talk to them and get advice and things like that. It's a very friendly department, and you know, there's a great sense of community up there. And all of Jorie's colleagues in the School of English Drama and Film, they're very interested in helping students find their feet as they start on this new adventure in college. We have a couple of other questions which I might take. I think we still have a few minutes to go. We have a question around, what are the best courses to pair with English? What subjects work well together? I wonder, could you take that question, Jorie?
Yeah, and again, I think this is going to come down to what you have an interest in. I love that Rebecca paired English with computer science, something that, you know, wouldn't seem obvious at all, right? Because you have two completely different interests. And she talked about how complementary she found those things that seem completely opposite. So while it might be very simple to study English and film, or to study drama and film, or any of the subjects sort of within our school, those are great combinations because we all use the same tools. We're slightly different subjects, but you analyze a play with the same tools that you analyze a film as you analyze a novel. Mostly, right? So you can see overlaps very, very easily. History, politics, languages, all of those are really overlapping analytical skills that you'll find that you go to one class in history and then your next module in English, and it'll be very, very obvious to you how those two connect and how you're using the same things. But like I said, computer science, go do that. Like, that's fantastic. Something that seems so unrelated. To be honest, the research skills, the communication skills, the community building skills, and the just sort of thinking critically and creatively are skills that you will learn in the School of English Drama and Film that apply to everything you will ever do.
And to add on to that point, UCD for the Arts and Humanities has what subjects are in each block. So you have English would be in section A and history could be in section D. As long as those subjects aren't in the same section, you compare them. And in your first year, you pick 3 subjects and you continue on with 2. So my third one was art history, because I enjoyed that in secondary school and I tried it for the year, but then I realized, you know, I preferred the English and computer science. So look at the different combinations and read through the descriptions, and definitely look at the student testimonies. That will give you a really good answer as to what you would enjoy to do, kind of thing. And it's real from a student who's gone through the course and has been in your shoes.
Thank you very much. That's great. And just to add to that, we're getting a lot of questions about, can I meet a student who's doing a certain combination of subjects? Or how can I find out more about the different studies? So we've popped in the chat there a link to the 2020 brochure, which shows you all the different subjects you can study them, and then the way you can study those subjects. So whether it's the joint honours degree or whether it's the humanities degree. And I would strongly encourage you, like Rebecca said, to read the student testimonials, to find out a little bit more about the details on the modules that you're going to study in those courses and the different ways to study the course. But the most important thing is to figure out the subjects that you love and the subjects you really want to study. Do that first and foremost, and then figure out the ways to study. So there are a lot of questions coming through. We won't get to all of them, unfortunately, today, and thank you so much. But just to group a few of them together, the choices and the ways to study is in the link in the brochure. We will be having, in terms of meeting the students, we'll be having a lot of open days and open evenings in October, November, December, around that time. So stay tuned with Arts and Humanities. You should follow us on Twitter or Instagram and keep watch for the sort of events that we're having coming up. Humanities UCD is our handle. We'd love you to join in our conversation throughout the year. We'd love to hear from you. And if there are any specific questions, we'll try to get through them via email directly with you in the follow-up later on this week when we get through all the summer schools. There's a lot of questions as well coming in about the careers. So again, there's information of that on the link that we sent to you, which we will also send to you in the follow-up email later this week. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here. I'm going to give a last word to each Rebecca and Jorie. So it's goodbye from me. Thanks again for joining us. We might go over to you, Jorie, if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the group before we close out the session.
Mostly just thank you all for taking an hour of your beautiful sunny June day to come and listen, and for your interest in English drama, film, and creative writing at UCD. And you'll get some more information from Emer, but don't hesitate to email myself or the school administrators, and they can answer more of your questions. And we're very happy to do that. And we hope to see you here next year.
Oops, that's great. Thank you, Jorie. Rebecca, we might just get a quick word from you.
Yeah, so guys, just to reiterate, Jorie and everyone else, just thank you so much for coming on there, and I'm really glad that I got to answer a couple of your questions. My biggest point that I would just say, guys, is if you are thinking of coming to UCD for an English degree, it's probably going to be one of the best decisions you could make. It has amazing opportunities that come with it. And just remember that whatever you want to do throughout your entire time in college, just make sure that you look after yourself and you make sure that this is something that you would love to do, and you just make the most out of your experience. I've gone through this now for the last 4 years, and the skills I've learned both inside and outside the classroom are completely invaluable. I have so many memories, and it's all down from the people I have met to the lecturers who have taught me, and just everything that I kind of took out of it. And whatever you guys decide to do, just make sure that you absolutely love every step of the way of it.
I think Emer's mic might just be
I'm on mute. Sorry. Final word of thanks for taking time out from the beautiful sunny day, and do keep in touch with us. Follow us on Instagram. hello.artshumanities@ucd.ie is our email. I'll say that again, hello.artshumanities@ucd.ie. So keep in touch. We're here to help you. We want to help you make the right decisions. We wish you a great week at the UCD Virtual Summer Schools. Thank you and goodbye.